Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
Last week, I told you about some of my Bigfoot sightings. This happened at Ocean Shores in Washington State in the month of July, 1959. Our family went to Ocean Shores digging razor clams, and we'd finished about midday and went into the motel to clean the clams. Me being the little guy, I kind of got to shuffle out of the way. So I went outside behind the motel, and behind the motel was a big blackberry patch about 20 foot long and 7 foot high, and it was just loaded with clusters of blackberries. And so I looked around and I found 3 white 1-gallon beach buckets. And I went over and I began to pick the low-hanging fruit clusters into the bucket. And while I was picking it, there was a tug on the top of the vines of the berry bush up near the top. And I heard a sound like somebody was sucking something. And I looked up, I looked around, there was nobody, there was no one. So I continued picking the low berries into the buckets, and I worked my way to the right, and there's a tool shed there. And I went over and I picked up an old-fashioned wooden step ladder, and I came over and set it up in the blackberries, and I began picking more blackberries. And as I'm picking the blackberries, there's a jerk on the vines towards the top, towards my left side. And I look up there, and this black hand comes up, and it grabs some vines, and it pulls it down to the other side of the berry patch. And I just look at that like, that's odd. That's, maybe there's somebody around, but I don't know. I don't see anybody. And so I'm picking, and I climbed a little bit higher up on the ladder, and this right hand comes up over the top to my left side, and it's pulling berry vines over to the back side. And I watch the hand, and I don't really think anything about it. And I'm back to picking the berries, and the hand comes back to get some berry vines to pull over. So I reach over, and my left hand, I touch the hand. Well, the hand pulls back, and then it comes back forward, and I reach over and touch it again, and go back to picking blackberries. And the higher berries are above my head, and I'm about 2 steps up on the ladder. And I reach up to grab a vine of blackberries and pull it down, and up comes this right arm and hand, and it grabs the vine right next to mine, and its fingers are just about a finger's width away from mine. It pulls them down right in front of me, and it's a hand. It's about 9 inches by 6 inches. It's got hair all the way to the fingernails, and it's got human-like fingernails. And I'm picking berries with my right hand, and then I let go of the vine, and the hand pulls it to the other side of the bush, and I get that sucking sound again. Back to picking the blackberries, and I reach for one on my right side, and up comes the left arm, and it's covered from hair all the way down the arm. The hair is about 1 inch too long. It's smooth, shiny, black hair. And it's, once again, it's holding the vine right next to my hand, and it pulls it down, and I pick berries, and I turn loose of it. It pulls it over. And I go back to picking berries, and I'm picking berries with both hands, and I come up another step, and I'm just really concentrating on picking the blackberries. And about even with my waist at the top of the berry patch, the right hand comes over, and it's right in front of me. And I just reach over, and I put my left hand on top of the hand. And the hair's soft, and like I said, it's got hair clear to its fingernails. It doesn't pull back. And I'm looking at the hand, and I could see the hand and the wrist and a couple inches of forearm. And we go back to picking berries. And I keep doing this. I would reach up to get berries. It would come up and pull it down, the left arm, the right arm. And I'm not thinking of it. I just see, like I said, 2 arms, 2 hands. They're human-like hands. Like I said, they're 9 inches by 6 inches, covered with hair all the way up and on their fingers. And they have human-like fingernails and thumbnails. And so I climb up. I'm just about to the top step of the wooden ladder. And I got my last bucket, and I put it up on the top part. And I reach up to the left to get the cluster of berries and vines, and I start pulling it down, and up comes their right arm again and pulls it down, and it stops about even with me, and I pick off some with my right hand, and I put it in the bucket, and I let go of it, and it pulls it over, and this time I can look down now, and I look down, and there it is. I look at it right in the face. I watch it suck the clusters in its mouth, sucking them off. And so I, being a young boy, I decided I'm going to do it myself. And so I started to suck them off, the clusters, and I scratched my nose and my cheek and my lip pretty fiercely. And that's too painful for me. That's no more of that for me. And so I looked down at the face, and the skin on its forehead and its nose is a real dark tan color. The nose is flat. It has a beard, about 2 inches of hair on its face. I can see its ears. Its ears are bigger than mine. They're covered in fine black hair. The head is, to me, looks bigger than that of a head of a person that's 6 foot tall. And I can see it from the top of its head down to about the middle of its chest. It has no clothes. It's all covered in black, smooth, shiny hair. It's got like a lantern jaw. It's got chin and whiskers. And it's just standing there looking at me, and I'm looking down at it. And I say to it, "Are you picking blackberries too?" The sweetest ones are the big ones up top. It doesn't speak back to me. It kind of just moves its head a little bit. I got the feeling that it can understand me, because when I would reach up to get the next bunch of berries, it would reach up, pull down, and do it. And so I'm watching it, and it's watching me. And our faces are about 2.5 to 3 feet apart. And I'm looking at it, and being a typical boy at that time, I say, "Can you talk?" Nothing. It doesn't respond. It just kind of moves its head a little bit. And I'm thinking on it, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, because it doesn't look like any Afro-American kid I've ever seen. It looks human, but yet it's not human. So I wait a minute, and I ask it again. "Can you talk? Can you hear me?" And I reach up, and just inadvertently, I tap my right ear with my right forefinger. It looks at me, and it's always watching my face. And it reaches up with its left hand, and it taps its left ear. Is it saying that it can hear me, or is it copying what I'm doing? And so I go, "Can you hear me?" It taps its ear again. And I figure out, okay, it can hear me. And I'm watching, it's watching me. And I thought to myself, how sad. You can hear, but you can't talk. And I looked down, kind of feeling sad, and it made a little oomph noise. And I looked back up at its face, and I said out loud, "How sad. You can hear, but you can't talk." And I looked at it, and I said, "You need a friend." And the ear tap again. And at this time, we're pretty square to each other, and it takes a cluster of blackberries in its left hand and hands them forward to me. And at the same time, it brings its right arm up and hand palm up, and it's right off, touching my side. And so I take the blackberries and I eat them, and I let go, and I take a cluster from my right side and I hand it to it in the exact same manner. And it takes them and eats them. And I put my hand down into the palm of its right hand, and it's holding my hand. It's no pressure. It just holds my hand. And at that point, I feel this instant bond of friendship. And we're just continuing to feel like friendship and companionship. And we go back to picking blackberries. And this continues. We'd reach over and pull down berries, and he'd touch each other's hands, and back and forth, picking blackberries like, your old friends. And about this time, real sudden from my left side, this black Labrador, the people in the duplex next to us had a black lab. It comes charging over. It's snarling and growling, and the berry picker growls back at it. And I turned really sharp to my left, and the ladder goes out for me, and my bucket of berries falls, and it lands between the legs of the step ladder, and I hit the ground on my bottom thump. And the Labrador and the berry picker, they're growling back and forth. It shakes the blackberry vines. And I'm sitting there, what's going on? And the berry picker comes running out from behind the patch, and there's a path that goes into the woods. And as it's going, it comes under a Douglas fir tree, and it reaches up with its right hand, palm up, grabs the branch. It's 4 inches thick, and it snaps it off and then flips its arm down and breaks the other end off. The lab stops about 10 feet from it, and it's a Bigfoot. It turns to the left. It's courting its hair. There's no clothes, hair top to bottom. It's got its left arm up between waist and chest, slightly closed hand. It's got the other hand with that stick, shoulder height, and it's getting ready to whoop this dog. And they're growling, and meanwhile, adults are coming out. The owners of the black lab are calling the dog off. My grandparents and my mom come out, and everybody's yelling, what's going on? Well, I'm sitting right on my butt, and I'm looking right at it. The adults don't see it because they're not looking at it, but it's screened a little bit by ferns, and it goes up the path. And on the right side, there's a old dead Douglas snag and a tree. There's like a little dip behind the ground. It goes over it, just drops into a squatting position. I got a straight line of sight to it, and the adults get over there, and the owner of the dog says to my family, a bear growled at the boy, and the dog charged in to protect the boy. Moment of reflection here. What bear runs on 2 feet, can reach palm up, break off a 4-inch thick branch, break the other end, and turn to face a dog standing on 2 feet? Well, when everybody's around me, I see it walk up the trail. Like I said, it goes off behind the stump. So I get escorted into the house, to the motel, and everybody's asking me, and it's explaining my berry picking friend. So as I'm doing that, 2 of my uncles go outside, and they go around the back side of the patch, and they said they found 13-inch quadruple E wide flat footprints going from the blackberry patch up the trail to where the stump in the tree was, and then a set of tracks coming back onto the grass. And they said they found the third bucket of berries. It had been set up right, and most of the berries had been put back in it, and the ladder was folded together, but it was laying lengthwise up against the blackberry patches. Earlier, my mom and them had taken the other 2 buckets of berries in, and they brought the third one in. And after explaining what I was seeing and what was going through, My grandfather said the boy's describing a Sasquatch. And here's the next point of reflection. Who goes picking blackberries barefoot? And I believe that blackberries that are gifted to a person is the ultimate friendship gift from a Bigfoot because they depend, it's such an important food source. And that's that one. All right. So I'm going to tell another one, and I'm telling them in this order so that people can see the similarities in what Bigfoot behavior is. My next sighting, we were on my dad's vacation. He took a vacation in the fall, and we went up to Mount Adams, which is in Washington State, and we camped at Killen Creek. I mentioned that in the other story because that's where my dad took his vacation. So, on the lazy part of the mid-morning, I decide I want to go berry picking. So I go up to my mom and I ask her for her 2-quart Tupperware bowl. And I proceed up the road to where the huckleberry patches are. And this sighting, incidentally compared to the one last week, the one that I told you last week was on the right side of the creek. This is on the left side of the creek, almost straight across from where I told you about the other one. So I reach to the edge of the Douglas fir trees, and I stand there. It's quiet. And I look around. I'm surveying the huckleberry patch. And the huckleberry patch is about 75 yards wide. And about 150, 200 yards, it goes down over a bank, over a hill. About the middle part of it, the hill is just stumps, and there's rotten stumps, and there's ferns, and there's big huckleberry bushes, and there's grass, and there's a lot of it. It goes across the length of it. So I step off the road into the grass, and I no more do that. And then from my left, up along the edge of the woods, there's a very sharp whistle. And I stop, I look, and I see the bushes open and close going away from me down the hill. But I don't see an animal. I don't see anything. And so back to the task of picking huckleberries, and I walk over, and the huckleberry bushes right next to me, there's not any berries on them, and it looks like the twigs and the branches where the berries would be were all broken off. They're gone. And like a pile around these bushes, there were the twigs. They were void of leaves and berries, and some looked fresh. And I walk forward about 10 feet, and there's a big patch of huckleberries that are just thick with berries. And I just start to pick them, and from the wood line at the bottom of the hill comes back the exact same sharp whistle. And I stand up and I look. I don't see anything, but I catch the motion through the brush from my left side going to my right side. The bushes open and close like a V shape, and it ends behind a big rotted stump, and there's ferns and huckleberry bushes there. And maybe I kicked a deer out of its bed. So I go back to picking huckleberries, and I look in my bucket bowl, and I'm not making very much progress. And I kind of stopped to think, what would be a better way to do this? And as I look up, I see the bushes coming open and close again. And I look, and I don't see nothing. So I get the idea. I take off my sweatshirt. I lay it on top of the huckleberry bushes, and I take my T-shirt off, and I tie my T-shirt in a knot where the arms and the neck is, so I got a bag. And I get my sweatshirt, and I start to put it on. And as I'm pulling it on, I'm looking through the hole, and back in the brush, I see a face looking at me, a black face. And I pull my sweatshirt on really quick, and I look, and just in time, I see the animal. It's on all fours. It turns, and it's crawling through the brush. I catch the back of its black hair, smooth cut black hair. I don't see any ears on top. I see the right arm. I see this big, fat, hairy belly and the part of a right hip. And it disappears into behind another stump and stuff. And I just watch. And the wind's blowing from where the animal came across in front of me. And the only thing I can smell is dry grass and huckleberries and dirt. And I just hold still because I know animals see motion, and I'm looking with my eyes. I'm not going to move. And it's calm, and I'm calm, and I don't smell any bear smells, thank God, because I know bears come into huckleberry patches. So I back to work picking huckleberries. This time I would take the twigs, and I'd put them inside my T-shirt bag, and I'd shake them. And I kept doing that. And I'd pour them into the bowl as I went along, and I looked up and I saw the brush move again. And this movement is always coming from my left, going to the right. And it's a little closer each time. And so I'm continuing to pick the huckleberries and filling the bowl. And I take a break and I look up and I'm looking in front of me. There's a path about 1.5 feet wide that goes to the end of the patch. It goes down under the Douglas fir trees, and where it comes up and levels off, there's a trail that goes off to the right, my left, and there's the one I'm on, which eventually goes to my right, back up to the road. And so I back to picking the huckleberries, and I look to my left, and I see a shadow move. I just freeze. I hold still. I'm kneeling down, and it disappears. I don't see any animal. So I back, and I'm just about full of the bowl, and I fill up the bowl, and I look up again, and the shadow moves again. And I'm looking straight ahead at the path that comes up from under the Douglas fir trees, and I can't see the path that goes down into under the fir trees. And I'm just watching, and I see the animal move. There's like 3 to 5 bushes and a clump there, and I can see an arm out each side of the clump, and its head comes up above the top of the bushes, and I can see its eyes. I can see a face, and I can see the animal, and it's in front of me. And maybe 40 paces, and that's a short distance for I'd say an actual real feet was probably 20 feet away. And I'm watching it, and I'm kneeling down. I got the bowl of berries in my left hand, and I got the shirt bag half full of berries in my right hand. So I come up on my knees, up from the kneeling position. I'm looking straight at it, and it rocks up into a squatting position. And the best description that I can give at what I'm looking at is it looks like a Japanese sumo wrestler covered in short, black, smooth, shiny hair. And so I just slowly stand up, and it's still squatting and looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to figure out what this is that I'm looking at. But I got to walk forward, so I just walk really slow forward, and I turn to my right because I'm going to go up to the road and go back to camp. When my back is turned to it, I turn to look over my right shoulder, and it stands up. It stands up on 2 legs, and it takes 3 steps up the path I just came on. And so I'm standing there looking at it. Its legs from the bottom of its bottom down are covered by the huckleberry bushes. I can see its left hand out in front of the huckleberry bushes, and it's black hair clear down to its fingernails and thumbs. And I start looking up, and I follow the arm back up. It's all black hair. The body's all covered in black hair, and I can see the shoulder, and I can see the collarbone, and the head's sitting right on like the collarbone. Its jaw protrudes out farther than its nose. It's got a flat black nose. It's got protruding eyebrows, and its hair from its forehead sweeps up and back like the old-time bouffant hairstyle, and I can catch part of its ears outside of its hair, and its skin's black. The hair's black. And so I can see the face, the eyes, the flat nose, the chin, and I'm looking in as I go down, and I see it breathing. I see two round, full breasts and nipples, and I say to myself, nipples, and I drop my glance just right now to the protruding belly, and I can feel the blush coming on, and after all, it's not exactly appropriate for a boy of my years to be there looking at a naked, hairy woman. This is what it looked like. So I muster up enough courage to look up at it, and I look at her in the face, and she has the exact same expression on her face that a mom would give to a little boy or girl that kind of feels awkward. And I go, okay, I'm calm. It's calm, and we're just watching each other. And I figure, well, it's about time I head back to camp. Now I have the bowl of berries in my left hand, and I bring it up to my waist, in front of my stomach, and I open the bag that's in my right hand, and I pull it over the bowl, and I kind of smooth it out so I don't spill anything, so it doesn't, and I look back at her. She takes her left arm and cuddles her stomach and takes her right hand and rubs on top of the protruding belly like I did with my bowl. And it dawned on me what I was looking at. And she flashes this big, beaming smile like we're recognizing what we're looking at to each other. And I start to walk off down the road, and she starts to walk down the hill. And I'm going through my mind, I'm trying to piece the pictures of this encounter together. What is this? What's the purpose of this encounter? And in my mind, their pictures are flashing in my head, and it stops at another berry patch and another figure, and I know what the animal is. I instantly know what it is. And I turn and look to the left at it, and she looks at me, and she walks over. And then the thought came to my mind. What would a first-time pregnant woman do? Who say maybe 8, 9 months pregnant? Wouldn't she go to a playground or somewhere where she could watch children doing things, playing in anticipation and forethoughting about what's to happen? And as I walked away, that's what I felt. I felt pride and happy. And that's the way it was on the last week of July in 1963. Now, this next one I'm going to tell about, this is the one that gets the most questions about. It's also a part of the BFR report. This encounter happened July of 1972 at Lake Cushman in Washington State. 4 of us decided to go camping up at Lake Cushman. 2 of them were ministry students. One was to be my first wife, and myself, and we got up to the campground, and we got our camp set up, and there were other people camping there, and it was getting dark, and everybody was building their campfires, and we had our campfires, and along about full dark, the first thing we hear is this, like a woman's voice, this hysterical screaming, and it's screaming, and you can hear it all up and down the mountain, and it's joined in by a little higher voice, more childlike voice, and it's screaming, and they're screaming, and this tenor voice screams back, and they're screaming back and forth. It really sounds like a shouting match, a screaming match between something with a human-like voice, and people are looking and listening to this, and it's dark, and they're talking, and some people think it's a coyote, and no, coyotes don't make screams like that. Not even a bitch in heat sounds like that. Some people thought it was a mountain lion fighting, but there wasn't that wah, wah when lions are crying or roaring. And so people were stoking the fires up and putting on a couple extra pieces of wood. And we were talking, and they go, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm a pretty good tracker. In the morning, I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to go up that road, go up the direction of that mountain. Maybe I can find some tracks or see something. So we went to bed, and there was some screaming off and on during the night. We were just cracking daylight, and I put on a brown sweatshirt and khaki pants, and I had a bowl of cereal, and I walked out of the camp on the entrance road, across a little wooden bridge, and to the left of the bridge there was like an old rusty iron gate and like an old road that went down into the bottom. And I started walking uphill to my left on the edge of the road, and had gone about 150 yards, and I heard chattering, like voices chattering. I could hear syllables and stuff, but I couldn't understand what it was. And I could hear the breaking of branches. So I stopped and I listened, and I could hear the chattering. It sounded like 2, maybe 3 back and forth. And as I would walk, only when they'd walk, they'd stop, I'd stop, and I kept looking down into the gully. And it was really thick with ferns and willows and alders and big old huckleberry bushes, but I could hear the breaking of branches and the chattering. As it walked, I walked. I'm on the uphill side of it. It's a 10% grade down into that gully. And I walk along, and I'm watching down, and I hear the chattering some more. And I keep looking, and to me it sounds Korean. And I come up to a spot, and I'm standing right tight to a tree, because I can look down, and I can see a clearing going down through. As I'm looking down there, 2 heads step into the clearing, and I see the back of a blonde head, big white head, cone-shaped, bouffant type hairstyle, and half the back, and to the left of it, bouffant hairs like same head shape, another blonde head, and it goes into the thick brush. And I look at myself, and I'm saying to myself, that's the same bleached blonde color as an Alaskan grizzly bear. And I know there's no grizzly bear at Lake Cushman. And I'm looking at my watch, and I see what time it is, and I know I'm the only one out of that camp at that time. And what would 2 girls be doing walking through the brush? So I keep walking, and we're progressing up the hill, and I hear a large branch break. I stop, because if a person breaks a branch or steps on something, they'll take that next step. It doesn't take the next step, and I go, okay, this isn't people. And I just stand still, and I rush, and pretty soon I chatter, and I hear them moving again, so I keep moving. I walk along with them, and I'm actually getting a little bit ahead of them because they're going more down the hill, and I'm side-hilling it off the side of the road. And we get just about to the crest of the hill, and there's a shadow from the mountains to the right coming across the road and going down and making a shadow across the hill to the lake. And as I'm standing there next to a tree, I reach up and I grab a branch and I snap it off. And I stand still, the chattering stops. And I go, okay. And I'm getting ready to walk another step, and in front of me, about 75 yards, this big black animal on 2 feet steps up on the shoulder of the road, and I just hug that tree. And I'm looking at it, and I'm saying to myself, I've seen that before. And it looks to the left, and it looks back to the right in my direction. I just stand still. I've learned to look with my eyes and not move my body. And it walks across the road in about 2.5 steps. It's 9 foot tall, 4 foot or bigger in the shoulders. It's got about a 4 foot butt, and it goes up. It's all black, and it goes up through the brush into the tall timber. And I go, okay, I know what that is, but I'm interested in what's down here on my left side. And so I walk a few more feet, and the road levels off, and there's 3 fir trees next to the road. And to the right of that, I step off the road, and I'm sitting like on a little stump, and there's huckleberry bushes around me. And I sit down, I'm covered up except for the top of my head. And I'm quiet, just let things be quiet. And I can hear the sound of branches breaking in the thicket to my left. It's like I say, it's really old huckleberry bushes and trees and ferns. And as I'm sitting there, I'm picking a few huckleberries, and I look to my left about 15 feet away. I see like a tan hourglass looking out through the brush, and I sit still, just look with my eyes. And about 10 feet away from me, I see a second pair, bigger, same color, tan, looking through the brush, and I sit still. And the one on the far end, it turns to the left. It's on all fours, and it goes through the brush into the huckleberries and the grass, and I catch the back of a blonde head and part of a shoulder, and it disappears over the edge a little bit. And I'm watching. As I'm watching it in front of me, 8 to 10 feet away, this right arm comes out, and it's about 4 or 5 foot long. It's blonde, brown underneath. Its hands are black. It's got hair going up through its fingernails. It's got human-like fingernails. The skin is like a shiny black color, like almost like a driving glove. And it proceeds to pick some twigs of huckleberries and pulls it back. And I just calmly, quietly sit still. I don't move. And about half a second more, this blonde animal comes out on all fours, and it comes out, and it's just about straight in front of me, 8 to 10 feet away, and it sits down like it's side cheek sitting. And I'm sitting right behind its right shoulder. You can't see me at that angle. And I'm looking at it. I can see the conical shaped head. There's no sagittal crest. I can see the ears coming through the hair on the side of its head. The hair on it is like bleached out blonde. The skin is brown. And I'd say where it joins the shoulders, it's about 20, 24 inches wide. And the shoulders look to be close to 4 foot, and it tapers down, and I can see it, the top of its butt. It's sitting, like I said, it's facing away from me, and I'm behind its right shoulder, and I'm just picked a couple huckleberries, and I sit still and I watch, and it turns a little bit to the right, and it straightens its legs out in front of it, and I just freeze. And I can see from where its girdle parts would be, its legs, its thighs, down to its feet in the brush and the huckleberries, and it's facing a little bit more to the right, and I can see its face. It has brown eyes. Its face is covered with fine, bleached out brown hair and no visible neck. And I look down, and, well, it's a she. She can put Dolly Parton to shame. So I divert my eyes and I look down, don't want to be staring. And I'm looking down, and it flips its eyes over at me, and I look away. I don't look at it. And I'm watching it on my peripheral vision. It looks away. I look over at it. It starts to look back. I look away. And we do this about a half a dozen times, and I'm thinking, is she aware that I'm here? Is she figuring out that I'm sitting here? Well, she keeps doing this, and she goes back to feeding on the huckleberries. And Jane Goodall said that when you're around the chimps like she did, and Diane said, do what they're doing. Be like it's part of that. So I reach over and I start picking huckleberries, and I eat them, and she grabs one, and she strips them in her lips and drops it straight down. And so I try that. I can do that too. Got to spit the leaves out. And she flips her eyes over at me again, and I sit still. Then I flip my eyes over at her, and we do this a few more times. And all of a sudden, she yawns and stretches. And when she yawns, her mouth's open, and I'm looking right in her mouth. She does not have canine teeth like gorillas or other animals. Her teeth look exactly like ours. They're only bigger and thicker, and she has a tongue. And she's yawning, and oh, God, she yawns. I yawn. And then it hits on me like Diane Fossey says in her documentaries. Gorillas show aggression by baring their teeth, and they go, oh, that's a bad thing. I don't want to yawn. So I yawn again, and I cover up my mouth with my hands, and I look over, and she's yawning with her hands over her mouth, and she's looking right at me. I figure, she knows I'm here. She has to see me by now. And I yawn again, and she yawns again, and she sits up, and I don't look directly at her, and I sit up a little bit, staying calm, because I thought maybe I just, showed aggression. And she sits up straight, and she rolls her head to the right, and her eyes look over, and she bares her teeth like an ape would in aggression. And she does it 2-3 times, but I'm looking down. She's not looking at me. She's looking behind me. So I just sneak a peek to my right side. Across the road, there's a belt of like alders and scrub brushes of right next to the side of the road. And in about the middle of it, there's this big black form in the middle of it. And I don't pay attention to that because I have over here. And I turn back to the left, and I'm watching her. And I remember, okay, where's the juvenile? So I'm searching the bushes up to the thicket and around. I'm looking for the juvenile. And I don't see her. And about this time, the mother, she goes up to her mouth and she spits out a big handful of chewed huckleberries and leaves, and she's reaching over to her left side. And my eyes are right on that arm and hand. I want to see what she's doing. And she reaches over, and I'm looking at the huckleberry bushes where she's at for lighter, and I see what looks like to be a black stump with a round on top, with like something on the side. And I realize those are ears. That's a head. And the hand gets over there, and it comes on all fours. It reaches out, and it takes the chewed berries, and into the mouth it goes. And she does this a couple more times, and I'm looking right at it. And I said, this is not the same one I saw before. This is a toddler. This is a baby. So I'm watching it, and I'm watching the mom feed, and I'm eating some, just enjoying the morning with them. I'm learning. I'm right there with it. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, and I put my left hand on my left knee, and straight across from me, this little face comes up. It's got like golf ball size eyes, a shiny face, a little nose. Its hair is really short. And it grips his right arm and hand, and it puts it out on the bush. It's like I'm sitting with my left arm, and I look at this, and I smile, and it's smiling at me. And it takes its other arm and does it on the other side. So I do it with the other side, and it stands up and pops down, and I sit up and pop down. We're playing peekaboo. And the mom's just sitting there, and every now and then she would do some of it, and it leans to the left, and I lean to the left. It leans to the right. It leans to the right. And we just keep doing this. And I want to see a little bit better. So I cover my hands up above my eyes so I can see it. And I squat down behind the bush on the side. And as I'm doing it, the mom does the same thing with her hands above her eyes, and she bends over. And I go, she's watching me. They're mimicking, or we're playing. And as I come up over the bush looking at the toddler, it comes up and it has its hands above its face. It's doing what it's doing. We're mimicking, we're playing. It's the only thing I can say. And it does it again. It goes back down. Well, this time I come up and I point at it, and I just say quietly, I see you. The mom was sitting about 10 feet from me. She whirls around and she backs up real quick, and there's dirt flying. And I go, oh my God. I scared it, and I don't know what's going to do. So I sit real still, and I'm watching it, and the toddler drops down on the ground in all fours, and it goes, oomph, and it puts its hand out, its right hand out, palm up. And I say to myself, I've seen that before. And it flashes in my head, the Jane Goodall documentaries. And the mom turns and takes its hand with her left hand. And there's some noises going on between them. And I go, take a deep breath, and I let it out. I sit up a little bit, and I put my left hand out in the exact same manner that the toddler did. And the mom turns back, and she looks at me and what I'm doing. And without any hesitation, she starts coming over to me on all fours. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, do I want to let her touch me? Then she could throw me in the lake from here. And I go, well, no, I'm going to sit still, but not look directly at her. And I keep my hand out, and she comes over, and she takes my left hand in her right hand, and she's holding it. And it's not hard. They know their own strength. I can feel no pressure on my hand. It's just light. And she's going to smell it. And I turn and I look at her, and like a whispered voice, I say, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you with a toddler. And she just looks at me, and I smile, and she smiles. And then I take my hand out of her hand, and I put it on my lap. I don't make eye contact with her. She reaches over, and next to my left foot, there's a small stump. It ain't more than 4 or 5 inches. And she taps on it 3 times. And I figure she wants my attention. So I reach down and I tap on it 3 times, and I turn to my left, and she straightens up. Our faces aren't 18 inches apart. And I'm looking her right in the face. I'm looking her right in the eye. And she's looking me in the eye and the face. She's got soft brown eyes. Her facial expression is like that of a human with kind of a surprised look. And like, how did you know to do this? And we're looking at each other. And I figure in my mind, I'm remembering the Patterson Gimlin film of what Patty looked like. And, this one I guesstimate in age to be about 25 to 27 years old. I think Patty was in her 30s, but this one was not as physically as big as Patty. And she sits right back down next to me. I mean, I am within close enough we can reach out and touch each other. I'm 19 years old. I am excited. I'm learning. I'm pumped. Here it is, like I said, within touching this to a creature that people say doesn't exist, but it's sitting right there. And I'm playing with whatever that is, and it's a toddler Bigfoot. And she backs up and starts feeding, and right next to me, and she looks over in the direction of the toddler, and she looks back at me and goes back to feeding. And about this time, the toddler grabs both sides of the bush, and stands up, and he goes, and shakes the bushes at me, and I reach over and grab the bush, and I go, and I shake the bushes back at it. And we start the playing back and forth, peekaboo, lean left, lean right, hand out, hand back. And we're just going on doing this. And the mom's free, and the toddler and I are kind of like, well, lean out this way and turn to the left. Lean out this way, turn to the right. And we were having fun. We're playing. And mom's sitting there, and she looks at the baby, and she looks at me, and she kind of sits up, and she, just like a human would do, she rolls her eyes. And I look at her, and she's looking at me, and I say, obnoxious big sister, and go back to playing with the little one. The mom would join into it, and I started to get tired. It was getting a little later in the day, in the morning. And I put my face cheek on my left hand, I put it on my knee, and I look over, and the toddler does the same thing. And I look over, and mom's sitting on her bottom, and she's kind of got her right hand on her right face. And we're doing basically the same thing. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm starting to get tired. Maybe I could think about going, but I don't want to go. I have 2 Bigfoot right here in front of me. And she rocks forward. She comes over on all fours, and she taps the ground twice in front of me. And I reach over and I tap the ground, and I say, almost basically to myself, I guess it's time to go. And she turns to the left, And like I said, she's about 8 to 10 feet away. And Bigfoot's got a big butt. I can see her as she's crawling away, the soles of her feet. And as she starts to go over the hill, she reaches out and scoops up the toddler. And she disappears crawling down the bank. And then she stands up. And when she stands up, I look in the direction she's going. There's a big fir tree, and I figure she's going to put that fir tree between her and me like a barrier and disappear over the hill, or she's going to turn to the right. She turns to the right, and as she turns to the right, I see the head, the blonde head of the juvenile come across. The juvenile was there all the time. It was just outside of my sight. And they disappear in behind the thicket of huckleberries and ferns and trees. So in a crouching position, I shoot to my right about 20 feet. And as I'm coming to a stop, I look, I can see there's a trail coming up that side of the thicket, up past the trail that I'm on, and goes up and crosses the road. And so I just come to a kneeling position, and I'm going to sit down, and they're going to pass. I got to be out and touch him. And about this time, I get hit on my right hand with a fir cone, and there's some other stuff falling down from the trees. And I diverted away, and I look around, and I look, well, it fell out of a tree. I would learn later that I should have paid attention to that. And I look to my left, and I'm still concealed by the line of the brush, and there standing 10 feet away from me is a 5-foot-tall, blonde-haired, tan face. It's got its mouth a little bit like a bashful look on its face. It's all blonde, and at the pubic mound, it has a strip of black hair, and I figured that's a juvenile female. And we haven't made eye contact, just look at it, and from my right side, I hear this and crack, snap of a tree going on, and I turn fast to my right, and going up the hill is the 9-foot male. He's 9 foot tall, easy, 4 or 5 foot for the shoulder, about 4 foot for the butt. It's going up to the brush, and I think to myself, distraction. So I look back to the left, and I make contact with the juvenile female, and she whirls around, and she starts running down over the hill. Then that does this. There's this big blonde blur comes across me. On about the third step, I pick it up. It's the female running, and in front of her, there's a thicket of little Douglas fir saplings that are tall, and she hits that thicket like a bulldozer, and there's stuff flying, and you can hear crash through it. But she goes through that like we walk through tall grass. And she comes out, she's running. Her head does not move. It's stationary. She's taking 12, 14-foot strides, and she's stepping over logs, rocks, and stumps, and through stuff, and not even breaking stride. And she's coming from left to right, and she stops about 50 yards below me. And as she comes to a stop, I see the juvenile come around the hill and disappears behind her. And I'm standing there, and she's looking up at me. I can see the breath coming out of her mouth, and I can see she's standing there taking a pee. And so I'm looking around, where's the toddler? And I'm starting to get concerned, but oh my gosh, is the toddler been abandoned? Did they get scared away? Well, I didn't scare it. Daddy did with his yelling and throwing trees around. So I'm looking back along the area, and I can't find it. Well, I look back at her, and her head's looking down a little bit, and she's making this noise. I can't make out exactly what it is, but she's looking below me. So I kneel down, and I look down, and 2 feet away, about 10 feet down, there's a patch of bushes, and sticking out from the back side of the bush, I see 2 crossed feet, a little butt, and there's the toddler. It's in a fetal position, but it's looking up at me. And so I just kneel down, and really quietly, I look at it, and I say, there you are. It pops straight up. The bushes come up to its armpits, and it's looking to my right in the direction that the male went. Now, this toddler's head is bigger than it would be for its body. Its hair is real short, like the old-fashioned 25-cent GI haircut. It's got ears about my size, but they're black colored. It's got thin black hair on it. It's got about golf ball size eyes. It's got a flat nose, shiny little black nose, and it's covered in hair. I can see on the underside of its arms, I can see the skin, and it's from a pasty white color to natural tan deer hide, not the gold color, but like the gray color. And it's skinny, and it's standing there at its size, and it looks just looking for its mom. And I put my hand out, and it's watching me, and I open my hand, and I slowly move my fingers, so I'm pointing with my right hand, and he does the same. It does the same thing. And so I kneel down, and I point down the hill to its mother, and its arms are like a 45-degree angle, and it turns its body from the waist, and it looks down the hill, and it whoops back around. It's got this big surprised look on its face, and I can read that expression, "You found my mommy." And I about ready to laugh. And it looks at me, and I've got a little bit of nerves there. And if flight or flight comes across the station, it moves its arm back from the left, push press it, and it takes off running down the hill. It runs bow-legged, because Sasquatch, when they want to walk, they have a high knee lift and a thigh lift and knee thrust, and the leg comes out and around. And like I said, he looks like a bow-legged cowboy running down the hill. And I don't want to laugh. And it runs down the hill, and some branches were big enough it would grab him, it would swing on him, and back and forth. And in front of it, there's a blow-down old dead log, and it's got a root ball about 6 foot by 4, and the log goes down about 10 feet. It runs up, and it stiff arms the root with its left hand and vaults up in the air. And it clears the log by a good 1.5 feet, and it pulls its knees up by its arm. Its toes are splayed. I can see 4 toes go on the big toe, just like human toenails and fingernails, the same fine hair. And it hits the ground running and swinging. This guy could give Marshawn Lynch lessons in broken field running, how it dodges and bobs and weaves and swings. And it runs right down, and it comes up on its mother's right side. And it comes up, and she turns a little bit to the left. And I see the hands and arms go up, and I read that body language. It's pick me up. But Mama doesn't pick it up. She puts hands on it, and like she's comforting it, and I can hear them making vocalizations back and forth, but I can't understand what it is. And he disappears behind his mom, just like a toddler, and then he peeks back out, and he's leaning out, but he's got his left hand on the hair of his mom's thigh. And he leans out at me, and I smile at him, and I point back down at him, and I go, "I see you." And he pops back in behind the mom, and I hear the vocalizations again. And I'm watching, and he's got a hold of his mom's leg with his left hand by the hair, and he swings out like you hear people say how they lean up behind the tree, and he points up the hill at me, and the both of them make like a 4-syllable vocalization at me. I can pick up like hick, hiss, or something like that. And he goes back behind his mom, and they start walking down the hill. And I got my right arm kind of by my waist, and I just waved my wrist at him, waved goodbye. And like you see a toddler do, how it hangs on to its mom when it's walking away, it puts its right arm up in the same way, and it waves goodbye. And they go down over the hill, and they disappear into the timber. So I go to my right, I walk over, cross the road, and I see the pushed over Douglas fir. Now it's over 14 inches in diameter. It split as it snapped, and there's about a 35-foot tall piece going straight up where it's snapped over. And I walk a little bit more to the right, following along the line of the trunk of a tree, and it smells like somebody turned an outhouse over. And it's dissipating, and I walk to the end of the log by the stump, and there on the ground, there's 2 footprints that look like about the size of a football, bigger, somebody shoved into the ground, and between the 2 footprints is 2 piles of poop. And I walk a little bit further back to the right, and in the brush, the weeds and the grass, there's a butt print about 4 foot wide, 2 foot, and in front of it is 2 feet prints. So I line up myself with the butt prints and the feet, and I turn around and I look. And to my surprise and amazement, I look straight across. It was in a direct line where I was sitting all the time. He'd went up into the woods, he'd circled around, and he'd come back down and sat right behind me. And I never even knew he was there. I was in no danger at any time. There was no bad smell when I was near the female or the toddler. And the only smell was when he went to the bathroom on the hillside there. And so as I start to walk back down, this lady and her children come up, and she said she thought she saw a mountain gorilla go up into the woods. And I said, there's no gorilla here. And I told them as we walked out what I saw. And I got back to camp with my 2 ministerial friends and my ex now at this time. And they asked me, what did you see? And I said, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. But on the way home, I did tell them. That one's on the BFRO report. So was 2 of the other ones that I gave you. And from 1959 until 1972, I saw 8 up close and personal. And I've given you guys some of those encounters.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown, no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.